It's Sunday morning, and according to my computer, it's the 16th of November 2025, all day today, and it's a lovely still morning here in rural Ireland, but ground is very wet. Now, this is Trump versus the BBC, but before I progress to that, there are great responses on my video about the involvement of the Catholic Church in Irish political affairs. And I try to emphasize that just because I scrutinize something or criticize an element of something does not mean that I'm against the institution. And I am not against Christian churches in Ireland. I'm against the imposition of foreign religions on Ireland. Strongly against it. I apologize to nobody for that. But the Tuam baby home that all this scandal's about, according to the facts I have, and tell me if I'm wrong, it was the Bon Secours mother and baby home, also known as St. Mary's or the Home, and it was operated in Tuam, County Galway from 1925 to 1961 as a Catholic-run institution for unmarried mothers and their children, run by the Bon Secours sister. So I'd like if you'd at least get your facts right before you start wasting up space underneath. That's what it says here. Now we're moving away from that. We may come back to it again. If nothing about my channel, it's bringing in a bit of debate. Now the big problem I have, folks, is this BBC business. It really has done something. I couldn't get long enough to describe how great I feel that these rascals have been exposed. The situation is that Trump is out of time to sue in Britain because of a 1-year rule of limitation. And I think it's unfair because he didn't know this was out there. It was only brought to his attention after the time had expired. And that's strange in itself. But it's 2 years in Florida where he lives. And so he's going to try to sue in Florida. There are difficulties there. He has to prove he was damaged by it. I will offer here to make an affidavit that the general broadcasting of Irish and BBC media has been anti-Trump, biased anti-Trump. I can make an affidavit for that and go to Florida and testify if that's what's needed. I'd do my best for that. But there's so many people have their views on Donald Trump formed by the British and the Irish media. And what's big about this case is they deliberately spliced the two videos together. Now, it's not all to do with Trump. I hear now, and I have to check it more and tell me if I'm wrong, the BBC did a documentary inside in Gaza. And they were given the permission by Hamas to do it, and I have no problem with that because you wouldn't go into Gaza with a camera without Hamas backing you. But they photographed a cemetery where a lot of people had been murdered and killed. And they said it was the Israeli Defense Forces killed the people, when in fact it was the Hamas killed the people. So that is a huge lie if that is true. And I'm getting good evidence that is the case. They also covered up for Jimmy Savile for years. And somebody on my video channel said about celebrating death. Wasn't he good riddance? What about Hitler? Should we not celebrate his death? Good riddance. Old Ceausescu over in Yugoslavia. With any loss. What if you had an uncle in America and he had a bad cough and he died and left you a nice holiday home in Florida and $500,000? Would you not celebrate? God, I'd be as drunk as a coot. So, I don't see why you couldn't celebrate a life. It's not really, they don't celebrate the death, they celebrate the life, which ended in death. Sometimes that's how life ends, you know. Anyway, we're going to have a look at the background to the BBC and criticise me all you like. And I have the problem that there's such villains, and Radio Television Sheridan is the same. They take their staff directly from Britain. Now, I was in Radio Television Sheridan way back in the 90s to do with bringing kids to shows and that. And I was told by staff that they were nearly all gay. Nearly half of them anyway, were gay. gay women, gay men. There was an extraordinary amount of homosexuals there. Well, Kitchener was a homosexual, and he still was a tough man. But I think that generally, if you get a collective of homosexuals, you will have a more liberal view, pro-abortion viewpoint coming across. Anyway, that's the story there. I know a lot of my viewers are going to. I wouldn't look at it. I never look at telly. People tell me what to see on it, reliable people. But I couldn't bear it. And sometimes it comes on in the house and I get the shivers. I get the shivers with nearly all television, to tell you the truth. But it's not as good as Valavik. But we'll just see here some of the things about their staff that they had over the years. Now, the people concerned can write Val Martin, Kingscourt, Ireland. Because when you criticise people, you should give them some redress. VILMRTIN, Kingscourt, Ireland. And I will get back to you if you feel aggrieved with what I'm saying here. In 2007, there was an internal report in the BBC, it's there published, that found that there was a liberal consensus, that it was a London-based young people, high proportion of gay people, and a pro-migration, pro-woke, pro-globalist, pro-European, that there was a strong leaning in that way in 2007. In 2010, former Director General Mark Thompson said that the BBC was guilty of a massive bias to the left. There are two reports that there's a massive left-wing, woke would be the common term nowadays, bias in the BBC. Look at their advertisements. It's always white girls with black boyfriends and black husbands. It's rarely black husbands with the other way around, white men with black wives, which is not all right with me, provided it's not suggested. There is an implicit suggestion in RT and BBC that girls from the local community, like Irish girls or British girls, should not marry white boyfriends, that they should marry diverse boyfriends. That's there built into every advertisement and every programme they do. In 2013, Helen Bowden, former woman in BBC, reporter there, or something big anyway, there, she said that the BBC had a deep bias in relation to immigration. A deep bias in relation to immigration. Helen Bowden is the former news director. Now, despite those three findings, the BBC today says, oh no bias at all. Oh no, oh none, don't be looking here, you know. Former newsreader Peter Sissons, I have to be very careful here, folks, not to press the wrong button. If I do, I'll just publish the way I am. For Peter Sissons, well known. He retired and he said that the BBC was just very, very biased to the left. Very, very biased. He said this bias, this left-wing bias, was built into the DNA of the BBC, and that's what I'm saying. It cannot be fixed. No matter what happens, unless they're stopped and finished and got rid of, it cannot be fixed. He said he had no doubt that the majority of the BBC staff all vote for left-wing political parties. The main paper the BBC takes influence from is The Guardian, which is one of the most left-wing newspapers. And I remember my email used to be bombarded with Guardian offerings and trying to get me to subscribe to The Guardian, which is an extreme left-wing, mass migration, pro-liberal agenda, woke, wind turbines and all the rest. I know this mainly from my trying to campaign about the lack of compliance with environmental directives and also the lies that they tell about our energy. And you look at your electricity bill now and you see what is happening. I was right on that. That couldn't be got out there. They had it pushed down. John Humphreys, he's on Radio 4, I think. You remember John Humphreys? He said there's a deep institutional bias in the BBC. Andrew Marr was formerly a Maoist, big believer in Chairman Mao and the Cultural Revolution. Big believer in it. That's my information. And he was a member of the Get Labour Elected pressure group to try and influence people and voters to vote for Labour. That's Andrew Marr. You'll know him fairly well if you're watching television. It's alleged that he used to give people copies of Mao's Little Red Book. I remember there was an odd person in society that would have Mao's little red book, that bought into this big time. Well, you might say that it worked out. I mean, China's a big economy now. I'm just telling you, it's a communist state. They called him Red Andy when he was younger. He now claims he's a social democrat. In recent times, Andrew Marr has admitted that there's just an unbelievable balance or bias. All the staff are young, they're London-based, they're LBGPQ, they're all in favour of this, mad to the left. It'll be kind of Corbyn, like Jeremy Corbyn supporters. Next we have Lewis Goodall. And he's married to a woman who is the Tony Blair climate and policy advisor about climate change. So he is. So now he was a former member of the Workers' Power Group, and its symbol is a hammer and the figure 5. The Workers' Power Group is a revolutionary Trotskyite organisation. So I think I've mentioned Paul Mason, another lefty. He's the former culture editor and the former economic editor of Newsnight. So they had done something on Trump as well. So we're seeing a long list of them. Paul Mason is the worst of them. He is the full-blown Trotskyite, full-blown organisation. Or should I say was, anyway. Emily Maitlis, she was a former Newsnight, I think, partial editor or something to do with it. She's now on a podcast with Emily Maitlis, former BBC as well. She was reprimanded by whoever does the reprimanding in the BBC for an attack on Dominic Cummings, a fake or a wrong attack on Dominic Cummings, who'd be slightly conservative or some way conservative. He is conservative, and he made comments about energy, which I agree with. So she attacked him as well, and she got reprimanded. I would have to say that I think Andrew Neil was all right. I think he did his best to be a good journalist. There was a Soroto review in 2021, and it found the very same, that it was completely institutionally biased and never acknowledged its mistakes. A recent review by Michael Prescott found that BBC Arabic was totally biased against Israel. Told the Hamas, Palestine side of it, and excluded coverage about Israel. And that when it selected panel members, it selected wet Tories. In other words, it selected people from the Tory party who were really Labour if they told the truth of their mind. There's also information that an editor that was there, a female, was forced out because she didn't support the LBGP agenda. The BBC had a recent programme by David Olazuka, what a funny name, on history. And in Lord Robinson, a few of them did a kind of an examination of this. Lord Robinson was one of them. And they found that David fella, he has only a basic, I don't think it's a degree at all in history. It's only some kind of a certificate in history. No real experience in history at all. He just had a BA, Bachelor of Arts in History. And he was the one that was pontificating about the British Empire. They've been on a roller coaster recently condemning the British Empire and all the things that went along with it without giving the other side. And he has a very anti-colonial view and a very anti-British view of history. And that's the thing, they want to rewrite history, pull down statues, cancel certain events that happened, not to celebrate anyone that won a battle or anything else. Like they would, Montgomery, you know, that general in the Second World War in the North African campaign, like they would rubbish him out despite some of the very smart things he did and very courageous things. So they keep rubbishing the history of the country. And here in Ireland it's the same. They rubbish our history, make our history about Irish nationalism and all of these things. They make it, rubbish it in favour of that the real good people were the gay Muslim people who come into Ireland seeking to have homosexuality in Ireland for Muslim people because they can't have it at home, and bragging the whole immigration from there and bragging the countries they came from when they are actually killing people for being homosexual. So this is part you get here in Ireland that I experience. The BBC claimed in one night that that people getting car insurance who were coloured had to pay higher car insurance than those who were white. That was a complete and utter lie. Also, reports that found that in the run-up to Brexit, of 4,000 people allowed to speak on British radio, there was only 3% pro-Brexit. There was 97% pro-Europe and 3% pro-Brexit. Now, is that not some bias? That was a report by a crowd called Civitas. Don't know much about them, but that's who did it anyway, who did the report. 3% were pro-Brexit. Lord Rees, who founded the BBC, set his agenda to inform, educate and entertain. Look at real, true education. It wasn't too far out. And when you take Val's Pictorial Weekly, a bit of entertainment there too, with the bowl Molly McCracken. The present fella is Shamir Shah, another very much pro-Muslim, pro-woke, and he had a thing called the Runnymede Trust. Shah is the chairman of the BBC. How did he get that job? This Runnymede Trust. You want to hear about it? They popularised the term Islamophobia. There was no word called Islamophobia until Runnymede Trust, this Shah fella, set it up or was involved in it for 10 years. Now, there was another fella, Damien Buffond. He's the deputy chairman of the BBC, and he operated with the Wellcome Trust, an extremely woke organisation. And there was a museum somewhere, and there was all kinds of bodies and skeletons and things. And he got it shut down because he said it was racist and sexist. A museum, you know. Another board member, Caroline Thompson. She's the wife of Lord Liddell, Tony Blair's right-hand man, and absolutely committed to the European ideal. One of the things I remarked was I used to love comedy on BBC and the British television stations generally. Fawlty Towers, Tommy Cooper, Dick Emery, Stanley Baxter, wasn't it? Stanley Baxter, Benny Hill. We all got a great laugh. But that changed, and it changed when there came out Hale and Pace, which weren't too bad. But then came Rory Bremner. And Rory Bremner was the first time I saw comedians getting political. And he was an extreme very much left wing. And brought in the wars of the world and everything into comedy. Tried to say, oh, look at the Americans invaded Iraq. Oh, comedy, they're stupid. Like, it's not that he may have been right or wrong. That wasn't the place for comedy. Comedy should be independent of politics. That's the key to it. Now, there's no comedy. You never get a laugh on the BBC or ITN. Why? Because it's not culturally acceptable to have a bit of fun. You can't have that bit of fun because everything's racist, sexist. There's an IST word for everything. And they have killed that. So the same here in Ireland. You had Father Ted. You look at the way the British establishment dealt with Graham Linehan. They tried to put his lights out. Only for he had backing from Elon Musk or somebody. They tried to put his light out, and he was the author of the Father Ted. Funny things. There's none of that now today. And that's making the people poorer. My character was partly formed by the antics of Tommy Cooper. He'd always be doing some magic thing that'd go wrong. And I was the few that could see that it was comedy he was doing, it wasn't magic tricks. And the big face of him was enough to make, he only had to stand there and you'd laugh at him. There was funniness in him. Benny Hill was naughty. He was naughty And eventually he ran out of steam as well. So that's just what the woke agenda is. And I don't think that the BBC can be fixed. I hope it doesn't be fixed, but they'll try to horse it on. And the best thing we can do is to get the people to stop voting for the Labour, because whatever hope you had with the Tories, and if reform takes over, you might get something back to that again if that's possible. But they have damaged the whole upbringing of young people. They've damaged their brains by never letting them see anything they'll have a good laugh at. And here in Ireland, I often quote the case. I'm an anti-wind farm campaigner. And there was a case down in Laois that brought me on the radio, and discovered I knew what I was talking about. I beat a wind farm down in Offaly by an objection, and they rang me up, and when they realised I knew what I was talking about, they never let me on again. Not Vincent Browne, not any of them. And when I did get on Vincent Browne, they put the camera across and gave me the microphone and took it off me again. And they went down to that place in County Laois, and they interviewed up to 12 people or more. And one woman out of the 12 said, well, I like the windmills now, but I don't like them beside my house. And they brought her up and put her on the television, so that the people would say, oh, look, she's just a NIMBY, not in my backyard. When there was 12 to 14 other people that could accurately debate it. And the people over Wind Organisation in Laois, which is a very, very good organisation, they used some of my material to study the subject, and eventually they got on a little bit. But they deliberately tried to pick their people. So when you look at a programme on Radio Television, it's all picked. They're all selected. They all interview them before they go ahead. Now, just before I leave on this, the BBC, it's all developing. I have to deal with it a bit. We'll go back to Mr. Trump. People say to me, if you weren't supporting Trump, you'd be better off. You get more votes. Oh, how? If Trump has exposed this on the BBC, isn't that worthwhile having him president if he never did another thing? They took on everybody. They crucified everybody until they come up against the President of the United States, and they got caught. And they didn't expose it until it was statute barred for law in England. And that's very, very suspicious. But still, it was published in the Telegraph. And this is the right to free speech trying to raise its head there. So no one, only Trump would have done that, and we'll see how he gets on. My own view is he'll sue them for a big amount. He's up against it, proving that he was done harm. It's not easy. Proving that the programme was broadcast somewhere in America, not easy. If anyone saw these programmes in America, they should contact me. Drop a line to Val Martin, Kingscourt, Ireland, and just say, I saw it. Because what Trump is going to need in these cases is proof from people that they saw the programme where he shouted, I will go down to the Capitol buildings and we'll fight, fight, fight. People who know about that should contact, and Trump should have a line, a helpline, where people who did see it can get their view, or get it into the court case, make an affidavit. I'd gladly do it. Now, don't forget, in my hometown, 3 people voted Trump. A lot of people in Ireland have votes, and 3 of them voted Trump. What would that be in Britain? There must be 5,000 people. No, that's a bit excessive. There must be 3,000 people in the Republic of Ireland. Or if you take it the whole island, there must be 3,000 people who have a vote in the American election. There must be. Because the ones that voted for the Democrats or Harris wouldn't tell me. There must be. If that's the case, there could be 20,000 people in Britain who had a vote. So I would argue, if it was Trump, that the British people who would be voting for Trump would be put off because of the lies they saw on the BBC. You get a postal vote before the election, and if you saw that on the BBC, you might not vote for Trump. And that's the way I would be handling that. Because there are votes for Trump in Ireland, and there must be a lot in England. I'd say he got over half of the votes in the UK, and that published in Britain would be a damaging thing on him. How that goes is out of my hands. I don't know. I do anything I could to put them down, and to put down Radio Television as well, because this fake news has destroyed us. It's an insidious thing, and we are struck with it on the local radios in Ireland. Bring on this idiot John Gibbon. Why won't he meet me? Why won't he debate it with me? No, bring him on. What's his education? Anyone can get on, so long as they hold left-wing woke views. And I don't care whether they sue me or not. I mean what I say. It's unbelievable. I mean, I had a video here that got 43,000 views. I had another one on cars that got 53,000 views. There should be a rule where if you can get 5,000 signatures, you can get a 10-minute slot on a Sunday night. That won't come out. They'll back it up to the hilt until voters realise that it's the government that puts them there and keeps them there. And I mentioned that John Gibbons because he was on during the week. There's plenty of others. There's some fella down there in Maynooth University spouting climate baloney out of night, noon and morning, and in Galway University. And they keep running for these so-called experts without ever letting on the other view. Yet in America, President Trump, whether they like it or not, has ditched the whole green stuff, and so has many other big companies. That's only one. But the green, the fake environmental is only one of the many problems we have. The promotion of LGBTQ and the destruction of religion. The fact that in Paris they brought out an image of the Last Supper with an overweight, obese, homosexual man or woman, I don't know, gorging himself imitating the Last Supper. This is the stuff that these people crave. It is shocking stuff, and it's great that it's coming tumbling down around their ears. Let's hope we see the BBC destroyed. I wouldn't hold my breath, but I think they've lost public confidence. They've lost public confidence. Big time. We'll see you back soon. Bye.